Hello, 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 and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm Connor Rebush. That's Phil McKenzie.
Hello.
And fresh on the heels of UFC 300, we have perhaps the biggest thing in the history of MMA to discuss. We are very, very excited. I mean, it's a moment like this, certainly, I think that we've all been waiting for, certainly since the start of 2024, if not, long before that. That's right, Phil. I'm talking about the guy who's been commenting on all of our YouTube videos has finally hit 100.
Wow.
Yeah.
Historic.
I know. The listeners are rejoicing. Everybody's excited. And I sort of promised this guy that he would be on the show if he hit 100. And I just kind of thought he would be dead before he got there, to be honest. I just kind of thought he'd die first. But even if he has, someone else has taken over his account. And so I guess we have to make that happen sometime in the near future. Sometime in the next 9 years. We'll be sure to make that happen.
Wait.
But of course what I'm really talking about is UFC 300, and even more specifically than that, Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje, more successful than the last attempt at lightweight for old Max, and ending in what may be like the most iconic moment we've ever seen in the cage. Not just an incredible KO, not just like an astounding buzzer beater, but like one of the most Max Holloway things that could have possibly happened to end this fight in an otherwise very successful performance against Justin Gaethje. And we're going to talk about that one first this week. We wished we'd done it last week. We spent twice as long on Holloway Gaethje than any of the other two fights that we discussed on the main episode. So we'll be getting to Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill, and Zhang Weili, Yan Xiaonan, and whatever else shortly. But we have to talk about Max Holloway, who crushed Justin Gaethje with literally 1 second left after inviting him to an all-out Donnybrook for the last 10 seconds of the fight.
Yeah. I mean, this event as a whole has to go on to the, as you said, like it goes on to the short list of some of the greatest MMA and UFC events of all time.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the best, but I think, once you reach to a certain tier, it's simply, it's probably just all preference by that point.
Yeah.
It's just going to be where you were in your life and what what you favor and who your favorite fighters are and so on. And yeah, like you said, that KO at the end, I mean, again, it goes on to the short list of the most iconic knockouts in UFC history. It's basically up there, or MMA history for that matter. It's up there with, McGregor Aldo and Home Rousey and maybe like
Silva Belfort.
And maybe Silva Belfort. I mean, but I think those first two are probably in a higher tier of like recognition, especially nowadays.
Bisping Hendo, did you say?
The rest of it.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I would submit that this one actually should be rated above all of them, and I will give my rationale here. I like Max Holloway better than Conor McGregor and Holly Holm.
Uh-huh.
So I think he should be number one.
That sounds good to me.
Glad we sorted that out.
At least you're honest, That's that, because at the end of the day, that is how everybody makes their rankings of things like this. At least you're honest. I like him the most. And you know what?
Yep.
I agree. I know it's a brave opinion to express, but I also like Max Holloway. I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah, this was one where, as in another point on this card, Heroic Britain's picking was defeated by the vile Ohioans.
That's right. Not just by the Americans. Ohio.
Ohio specifically,
just...
even more humiliating. Not even one of the, historically powerful or impressive bits of America.
No. Straight from the old frontier. That's right. Midwestern glory. The Midwestern Khanate rises to conquer the globe.
I mean, I didn't believe that Max Holloway had this kind of fight in him. I might have been able to see him winning this fight, but I was shocked at how broadly dominant this fight was.
Yeah. I mean, so was I.
Mm-hmm.
Even having picked him. It also, I gotta be honest, like, there were certainly, you could tell Max, he did his homework. He scouted Gaethje. He brought a couple of classic tools out of the kit. Most notably, the spinning back kick was a constant companion in this fight. Which, whatever the commentators who do not watch tape and don't remember anything say, this is not the first time he's thrown it. Max Holloway used to throw it quite a lot, actually, very early in his UFC career, and has periodically pulled it out since then. But it was a fixture in this fight. I think that was something he picked up on, probably specifically to do with Gaethje's tendency to shell up really high and duck down when he's defending.
Yeah.
And it worked great. Even when it wasn't smashing Gaethje's nose, it was still a fantastic way to meet that defense and to meet his pressure. But even picking him, I was sort of expecting more of a classic Max Holloway fight, which this was not.
Yeah.
This was Max Holloway.
That was one of the interesting things about it, is that...
Yeah, go on.
You would have expected some kind of synthesis of, I think that's what we were kind of saying beforehand, right? Is you would expect some kind of synthesis of Poirier and Alvarez's successful approaches against Gaethje, which were basically to just pour it on and get him to shell up. And you would that was one of the reasons why I was so hesitant to pick him, is that thought he needs lots of aggression. He can't be sort of fencing. He can't be fencing Max in this one. But as it turned out, that's exactly what he could be, and exactly what was going to work. Yeah.
He was quite patient. I mean, he barely broke 300 strikes thrown. What kind of Max Holloway fight is that? The thing is, it's still a very healthy output, right?
Nama Unis Esparza levels of low activity for Max Holloway. Yeah.
What is this, Valentina Shevchenko? 300 strikes? Boo! But by Max's standards, a guy who routinely breaks 400 and often far exceeds that in a 5-rounder, this was much more in line with the sort of the trend that we were seeing. And that had me worried about picking him, and that had you not pick him, right? The fact that he has been more and more prone to this kind of performance, which feels quite possibly still like a response to aging and probably not feeling like he has as much durability as he used to just spend willy-nilly. But it was possibly the most brilliant version of that. I have to say, however, before we get into the nitty-gritty, what was Justin Gaethje's plan in this fight? Because as is so often the case, the flip side of a brilliant win tends to be an uninspired loss. And I didn't think Justin Gaethje looked very good. In fact, that was almost more of a shock than Max's ability to fight this kind of fight against him was for Gaethje to go out there and look like this directly on the heels of the Poirier rematch, in which he looked smart and tricky and consistent more than he ever has before. What was his?
I think at least partially, right, this has to be it's partially what we were saying about Zhang, I think, I never really thought about this because it seems like such a stupid thing to say about Justin Gaethje.
Mm.
And Justin Gaethje lead?
Yeah. It's a good question. He didn't look comfortable doing it
how
here.
How much of like, because I was trying to think about it. Have I ever really seen like in that's sort of the one of the things that we've seen from the from during the Whitman era is obviously that he's become so much more he's obviously become so much more defensively responsible, and he's become a better counterpuncher, and he's occasionally jabbed people and all sorts of kind of stuff. But like, back in the day, obviously he used to lead because he would just go after people and he would just throw like raw leg kicks at them or just swing giant punches and so on.
Yeah.
But like, does Justin Gaethje actually lead on people ever? I think, like, how much of this is so completely occluded by what we think of Justin Gaethje as, which is an insane, like, aggressive fighter who just gets into pocket exchanges? Like, how many of those exchanges tend to be initiated by Justin Gaethje? Because we've had Poirier, who was, sort of forced into a front foot fight against him, which is, as I think Zane has astutely said, not where Poirier is actually at his best, because he's not. He's a very defensively responsible back foot fighter, but he's a kind of wild front foot fighter. And then you had Rafael Fiziev, and I was just like, want the other person to initiate the exchange, and then he can start going insane. And is that why we just never see his jab? Because until it's late in the fight, until they're both sort of tired enough to get into exchanges all the time, and he just doesn't have reliable initiating weapons. And then if it comes down to that, then you're just like, well, your plan is to counterpunch Max Holloway.
Yeah.
Because that's very, very hard.
Seems like a terrible
very hard
plan.
to do. Yes, one person has done that. Really.
It also seems like a plan that may very well have lost to any version of Max Holloway. Like, aside from the fact that...
I was thinking, like, is it a plan, or is it simply who Justin Gaethje is?
Yeah.
Like, can he just... that's the thing. Can he actually initiate? I'm genuinely not sure. I feel like I have to go back and watch more tape now.
No, I think you're broadly right. It's not, I don't think he can't initiate. He has been more willing than this, even in this stage of his career, to just throw stuff out there. He was just sending low kicks at Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler. Against Poirier, he was leaping in with lead right hands. But he totally is more of either like a proximity counterpuncher or just a straight-up counterpuncher who lets you sort of enter his wheelhouse or swing something at him and fires back a lot of the time. I think you're right about that, at least as a broad tendency. And I think a big part of it is that Max is just particularly difficult to do that against. But I gotta say, why the fuck was he not jabbing then?
No.
Because that is his initiating weapon.
Yep.
And if you're talking about the 3 fights prior to this, where his jab has not appeared until the very last round, I mean, hey, if anything, this was almost an upgrade. His jab started to appear in the 4th round of this fight. And then sort of vanished again in the 5th. Something's wrong with Justin Gaethje. He just can't think. He just can't think. And in that way, perhaps the sort of stayed pace of the fight was a really, really brilliant decision by Max. It didn't give Justin Gaethje a lot of time to go on instinct, and to just fire away. But if that's a problem, why is he not jabbing? And I don't, there's the temptation to say, Whitman's done it again. He's persuaded another fighter not to pressure, but Whitman is constantly yelling at Justin Gaethje to do the jab. And we know that Gaethje is, despite all the improvements he's made, not really the most coachable guy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was the quote? I think I read it to Zane, but I included it in my Max Holloway piece last week. By the way, check out facepunching.substack.com. There will be another breakdown very soon of this fight. But it's where Justin Gaethje was talking about his like stylistic shift, and he says that hilariously and appropriately, when you look at a fight like this, his inspiration was Yoel Romero.
Mm-hmm.
Because Justin Gaethje's Justin Gaethje's driving impulse is to deliver highlights. Like that is honestly what he wants to do more than anything. He wants the crowd to roar. He wants to get into crazy fights that people love, and he wants to knock people the fuck out. And he watched Yoel Romero, he said, and he was like, holy shit, this guy doesn't do anything for the better part of 3 rounds, and then he knocks the guy out late, and everybody still goes crazy. I could do that. And as he's explaining this, he says, Trevor tried to tell me forever, you're doing too much. And I was like, what do you mean? So I'm not just going to fully blame Trevor Whitman, because I think just certain ideas don't exactly get through Justin Gaethje's head easily.
Mm-hmm.
But was I don't know. Whitman can be hurt in this fight, particularly as it wears on. He is begging Justin to pressure. Like after about 2 rounds, he's like, okay, enough of this. You need to pressure. I need you to stay on him. And Gaethje, again, he did a bit of that in like round 4, which I think is the round in which he dropped Max. But he just couldn't do it consistently at all. He just couldn't pressure. Which was weird because Max wasn't using his own pressure to stop that from happening. This is quite a back foot performance from Max.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it was in part, I think we've probably talked about it before, but some of that, tendency to not lead is because Gaethje is so committal.
Yeah.
He has to throw everything into he has to throw everything into his strikes and his defense, really, which I think was kind of key here. Was just meant that like Max just having like foot speed, just being able to get in on an angle and then get back out again, even if he's not pivoting or doing anything particularly fancy on defense, meant that Gaethje's like ways of covering distance, which are to lunge at people, were like either falling short or potentially getting countered. Also, yeah, his tendency to like, his to lean on like a big exaggerated defensive movement, namely like slipping down to the right. Poirier almost kicked him in the head for that, and
he did kick him in the head for that.
Max just, he did. He just about got his leg up there, didn't he?
You mean in the first round? I mean, he just about ripped Justin's nose off with a bat. You're talking about regular round kicks.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Poirier did. Poirier kicked him
yes.
doing that. But yes.
Yeah.
But then Holloway just keyed in on him doing that and just spinning back kicked him a whole bunch.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's partially just that, like, yeah, everything with Justin Gaethje comes packaged with so much commitment. I mean, it's like a much more brutish version of the reason that like Max was a really tough matchup for Aldo.
Yeah.
Is that like if you have lots of commitment, then Max Holloway can draw that out of you more than pretty much anyone else can.
Yep. Excellent jab, brilliant feints, and Max is the exact opposite of a guy who has to fully commit to everything. I watched so much of that fight with Calvin Kattar, which is one while it probably no longer contains the greatest moment of Max Holloway's career, the best boxer in UFC baby moment that everybody loves, it is still the quintessential Max Holloway fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's the zenith of his swarming high volume style, and the number of times in that fight that he will throw what you would call a 6-punch combination, except that 4 of the punches are feints.
Yep.
Like, Max is not a man who has to overcommit to get to you. He is a man who will give you 3,000 threats, and merely 1,500 of them are actual strikes that hurt you. You know, like, just constantly psyching people out and making them react and finding ways to build initiative and exploit the way that they respond to that. So yeah, in a weird way, this was still, I think, the way that Max Holloway would beat Justin Gaethje, but it did not look how I expected that to look.
No,
but that
it was
dynamic,
definitely the two. Like, you could have had this fight, 5 years ago, I think, between these guys.
Yeah.
And it would have looked probably even more bonkers than this fight was.
Yeah. I think
Max Holloway probably just would have won.
Yeah, that's how it feels. I think he still would have won, but it would have been the more violent version. But that central dynamic is still there. That Justin is just exploitable by a guy who operates the way Max does, whatever style he's using. That the way that he finds tactical openings still would have given Justin absolute fits. Another part of Holloway's scouting for this fight, that probably kept Justin from getting into it as well as he would have wanted to. He hit the body a ton.
Yep.
In fact, if you look at the stats, Max's strike by target are almost perfectly distributed from head, body, and legs. Listen to this. 34% of strikes to the head, 34% to the body, and 31% to the leg.
Wow. It's hitting his quotas.
It was almost a perfect distribution of offense to every target available. Max is always a big body puncher, but this one it really felt like a focus. Body kicks and body punches. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, that's why it felt like a big It did feel like a kind of synthesis of old and new Max, which is always nice to see.
Yeah.
With the body work and the spinning back kick and so on. I mean, I think Kaposa posted him. Who did he use it against? He posted him using it as a counter, but yeah, normally it has been his. It's been one of his space control tools.
The spinning back kick you're talking about?
Yeah. It's normally something that he used to kill people by the fence.
He crushed Will Cope or whatever.
That was the one, I think.
And he used it a few times against Anthony Pettis. He used it a few times. There's another one too. Dennis Bermudez.
Bermudez is the one where it's he's using it as like a back foot counter.
Yeah.
Where he's using it in the same way that he did against. But yeah, most of the time it was like it's when he's trying to pull someone in one direction and then he like normally along the fence.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this was I think it's basically just a space interpretation thing from him. And in this case he kept seeing Gaethje just ducking and drifting over to his right.
Yep. Yeah, a few times it was actually a jumping spinning back kick.
Mm-hmm.
Which is that's the way Taekwondo people use it to counter. It's the quickest way. It's quicker than pivoting to literally jump off the ground and spin midair. And you can still generate a ton of force because all the power in that technique comes from body torque. It doesn't require weight transfer or even really being grounded. It just comes from you coil up your entire body and then extend your entire body. So you can land a really hard one even while being in midair. And there were a couple times he used it that way. He literally Gaethje was already right on top of him and he just jumped and flung that heel into his gut. That's probably another thing, by the way, which affected Gaethje's chances in this fight. His nose got shattered badly.
Yep.
Like right at the end of the first round. To the extent that it was immediately treated in the corner, and as round 2 starts, there is just blood pouring out of his nose. They couldn't stop it.
Yep.
So that
it was one of those things where like Max spinning back kicks him, and then the he does the like the Frank Mir versus when he fought DC, and DC tried to do like a jump kick. He does the face after he lands the spinning. Max does the face after he lands the spinning back kick. And I was thinking, that's going to be the cool moment that people remember from this fight.
Yeah. Obviously, that's gonna be the cool moment. Yeah, he sort of watches Justin, who almost like falls out of the cage door as it opens, because he was hurt. It was I don't know if he was rocked or if it was just the unbelievable pain that comes with having a man's heel rip your nose out of joint. But he was like stumbling around at the end of that round and almost fell out of the octagon. Max is watching him, cool as a cucumber. Huh. I guess that happens if you duck down into it sometimes.
Yep.
I do love the way, again, it is, I wouldn't call it a staple technique of Max's game, but it is certainly something he's been good at throwing his entire career. That he just doesn't always lean on this much. Has never leaned on it this much. And I love the way he throws it. He threw it at such short range. I'll tell you who it reminded me of. Do you know the name Benny Urquidez?
Yeah, of course. I've seen Wheels on Meals.
Yeah, he's the heavy in a couple Jackie Chan movies. And I think he's also in Grosse Pointe Blank. As an assassin, because he's got a scary face.
Could be.
But back in the days of long pants kickboxing, Benny Urquidez was a beast, was a very, very good kickboxer, and he was particularly known for his left hook and his spinning back kick, often a jumping spinning back kick. And he threw it the way Max does. Like if people learn about this technique from watching that viral Joe Rogan video where he's kicking the bag. That's one way of throwing it. That's more of I think Joe Rogan calls it a turning side kick. And I think that's a good description of that way of throwing it. You spin, you open your hips and really turn the kick over like a side kick. Max's way is the way Benny would often throw it, which is like a mule kick. Short. Don't worry about turning the hips over. You just chamber the leg and kick it out straight behind you. And that's a really effective, surprisingly short-range weapon, which is why he was able to just counter Gaethje off the back foot, like when his back was already almost hitting the fence, and just smack it into him as he came bulling forward. So very cool. Other body work too, though. Lots of good straight shots, jabs, right hands to the body. Couple nasty left body kicks. Max has always been an underrated kicker, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like shit against Anthony Pettis. He hit him with a couple back kicks. He also hit him with some savage, just left round kicks to the body. Just like he did here.
That's how he finished him, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Just like he did here. Shit, he crushed Cater with a really nasty one at one point when Cater switched stance on him. Always been a good part of his game. But, it really just felt, aside from round 4, where, basically, like, the thing that should have been, I think, the really obvious adjustment for Gaethje happened. That he was like, wait a minute, Max isn't supposed to be good on the back foot. What if I go after him? And that round was razor close, and Gaethje landed a ton of hard shots because Max is still too willing to back up in straight lines. He doesn't really have, like, tight defensive footwork.
Mm-hmm.
He has to, he's still, even in this fight, he had to scuttle all the way out of range in order not to get hit. And when Gaethje just insisted on a close range and put the jab on him, that was a big part of it, he suddenly, couldn't miss with his right hand.
Yep.
Max just couldn't.
It was
stop
also, in some ways, I think, until the end of the last, it was the most violent round overall. Like, you saw how much damage Gaethje had to accept.
Yeah.
To kind of get that to happen. Is that he had to, because, every time he was stepping into range, he didn't know what Max was going to be picking him off with on the way. He wasn't sure if it was going to be a body shot, he was going to be walking onto a teep up the middle, or an uppercut, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And most of the time it was hitting him. Like, he got hit cleanly in that round, more than he had in the previous ones, frankly. But
Stats
it was the fact that this was the one where he was willing to accept it.
Yeah.
And was, started to be able to actually, like, have major success. Like, as you said, he started landing his jab. He started being able to get into range where he could land his left hook. And he managed to, get to the clinch into knockdown. That's, I guess, is his Pyrrhic victory for this fight, because he's now the only person to have ever knocked down Max Holloway.
Yeah. Which does seem to suggest either or both that Max's chin is not what it used to be, but also that lightweight, people simply hit harder. Particularly when the two lightweights you fought are two of the hardest pound-for-pound punchers in the sport.
Yeah. But even then, like, it was a pretty, like,
flash knockdown.
Well, it wasn't like, oh my god, he's really badly hurt. He's struggling to stay alive.
He was more hurt when Poirier didn't knock him down.
Yeah, it's a where was the fence kind of.
Yeah.
That is the difference between these two things.
Yeah.
Situation.
Yeah, he just got, like, clubbed on the ear and went down for a split second. He didn't even look really shaky when he got back up.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right though. Like, that was the. This is the thing is that was a decision that I think really just doesn't gel with new Gaethje.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's still, despite his style being more of letting the opponent come to him in the last several years, he has still neither been able to nor unwilling to respond when people have hit him really hard and put a ton of damage on him. But that damage has all been coming to him. It was the prospect of having to walk into it to make anything happen. I think that seemed very difficult for him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't really able to sustain it. He had that fourth round, and then round 5 came out, and we were kind of back to fencing. He kind of lost it. And then Max just started hurting him again. And that's the other thing, is like, Max might have been the first knockdown of Max's career. This might have been the most times I've ever seen Justin Gaethje hurt in a fight.
Yeah.
Like, he's been really, really badly hurt before, more badly than he was until the very end of this fight. He's been on absolute, like, stilts in several matchups. But Max shook him up, like, 5 times or more.
Yep.
He was hurting him a lot. Which,
I mean, Gaethje said many times that, he doesn't want that many more fights. Again, you can't really trust what fighters say when it comes to that kind of thing, but I think he knows that he can't, that his fighting style is not sustainable, that he cannot keep doing this for that long. And at some point, I think that does leach through from being something that your conscious mind knows and your subconscious doesn't, to being something that even your subconscious knows as well.
Yeah.
As you get older, you're just like, man, maybe I don't want to get hit quite as much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird to see two fighters having such a interesting fight when you could argue that that's going through both of their minds at the same time, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, a couple other things to highlight that I was really impressed by. If we're talking about quality counterpunching, Max did the best counterpunching in this fight.
Yep.
Particularly his right uppercut, I thought was absolute money. Another punch that he has pulled out before. Particularly, he dropped Volkanovski with it, I think, in their first rematch. But another thing that he obviously decided to lean on, given Justin's tendency to hunker down in response to everything.
Yep.
And
I think Ryan Wagner has written some good stuff on Twitter. About, Max's use of the uppercut. It was mixing the uppercut and the jab.
Yep. Ironically, I suppose, he used it exactly the way Justin likes to use it. Because that's one of Justin's favorite moves too, is to feint or paw with the left hand, get the other guy to duck, and have him duck right into the right hand. He also played it really nicely off the left hook, which is another good counterpunch for him in tight. Whenever he actually got Gaethje to commit to something, jab, and then get him to drop down into an uppercut and ending with the left hook. He landed both of those shots a ton. Not like a classic Max Holloway fight, but just fantastic. And I guess we have to talk about the ending. We mentioned it, but let's talk about it. How did you react, first of all? Because I yelled very loud late at night in my apartment building.
Yeah, I think it was mostly just shouting, oh, like the commentators were.
Pretty much. Yeah. I let one rip, though. Let me tell you, I went full Rogan on that one. I could not contain it.
Yep.
Yeah. Something Max has done before. Did it against Ricardo Lamas. And it was awesome. It was awesome then. But once again, actually, let me tell you how I want to talk about this. People saying that it's sloppy online and framing that as a bad thing. We know it's sloppy. We know it's risky. That's why it's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Everybody wasn't fawning over this moment because of the incredible technique on display. It was because Max chose to do this in the final 10 seconds of a fight he was comfortably winning. Didn't have to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's all those things that we've spoken about, people getting, as they get older, they get worried that they're going to get hit more. They will get worried that they're not immortal. Whatever else you can say about Max Holloway, he has learned that at least as far as his career goes, he is not immortal. He has lost 3 times to Alexander Volkanovski, one of them very, very soundly.
Yeah.
He's no longer the invincible champion that he was. He could have said that, maybe his losses earlier on in his career to Poirier and,
McGregor.
like Poirier and McGregor and so on, they were learning pains and now he's at his best. But, he knows that he is not immortal. He had a tremendous amount riding on this fight.
Yeah.
Not the stupid fake belt, but, where does he go? Is he just going to be, are people going to think of him as just, the second best to Volkanovski? Is he just going to be this, relative footnote to the careers of Volkanovski and, perhaps to Poirier? And all that other kind of stuff, and only young, dumb, stupid fighters would do what Max Holloway did.
Yeah.
And just be like, no, I am the best. I am the best. I'm the best at punching. I am the hardest man.
Yep.
Try
me.
I mean, this is and to just absolutely pull it off. To just absolutely have the fight in the bag and simply throw it on the floor.
Yep.
And say, come get it. It's here. You can take it now if you can just hit me. I will give you every opportunity. I don't want it. Come get it.
If it's something you're capable of taking, then why should I want it? Come get it.
Yeah.
Guess what, bitch? You can't take it. It's mine.
Yeah. Just that, it's that perfect confidence.
Yeah.
That, the ability to just throw everything to the wind. And then just make it happen anyway.
As Max said after the fight, I am him.
He is.
He is him. Yeah.
Yes, it's been a privilege to watch Max throughout pretty much his entire
career. He was amazing even when he first came to the UFC. He was incredibly good for his age, and the fact that he was like 4-0. I mean, this man started fighting good fighters in the UFC. In, by the way, one of the UFC's all-time deepest divisions, which remains an incredibly, next to bantamweight, the deepest division in the sport. And a division which he happened to share with two other all-time greats, and now possibly a third in Ilia Topuria. It's just a division that breeds incredible championship fighters and has for well over a decade. And Max is one of them. I mean, there's no question. I mean, to me right now, like, we're not going to talk about pound for pound and have a debate about it, but I was saying this when Volkanovski and Max were having their series. Everyone's like, is Kamaru Usman the pound for pound best? Is it still John Jones? Like, you idiots. It's Volkanovski and Max. Clearly. They are so clearly the best fighters in this sport. And it remains to be seen, although I have a suspicion that Topuria will sit in that spot for a minute yet. But I mean, now it's Topuria and Volk and Max. They're still the best three fighters. They're the two of those two are still two of the best.
And Islam.
And Islam. Islam's up there. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, these are pound for pound greats. And Max has been there the whole time. Even with the brutality of that third fight with Volkanovski, he has remained the guy that nobody except arguably the best fighter on the planet was able to beat in his entire division.
Yep.
Whatever trend you want to find in those performances, he was still pantsing and comfortably beating every other top-level contender at featherweight, even after he lost the belt. And he did that before he won the belt. He went 11-0 or something like that. In like a 3-year span, too. He fought everybody and ruined them. And then he held the belt and crushed people while he was a champion as well. He's simply one of the best fighters on earth. And I felt tremendously privileged and honored and savagely satisfied to watch not only this incredible performance from Max, but that unbelievably legendary final moment.
Yeah, I mean, those are the moments which people will remember more than belts and numbers.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
And he's great even on those metrics. But yeah, he'll be one of those fighters, you know, when he retires, people will be like, oh, they don't make fighters like Max Holloway anymore. And the truth will be that they never did. Like, he's just a one-off.
Yep. He's special.
You know, he's just one of those guys who only, you know, you'll never see anyone like Max Holloway again. You'll see other people who are badass and in their own ways, but yeah, he's just a special fighter.
Yep.
And yeah, been great to watch him.
He threw down in the pocket with Jose Aldo. He landed a no-look right hand and then no-look slipped 5 punches from Calvin Kattar while talking to the commentary booth. He threw down with Ricardo Lamas in a fight he was easily winning, but nobody will remember that anymore because he did the same shit up a division and knocked the dude out with 1 second to go. He's a legend. He is a living legend.
One of the best to ever do it. Yep. And yeah, I'm going to say it. Greatest KO in MMA history.
Yeah. Yeah, for combination of it just being a straight-up savage KO and also the context in which it came, I mean, you can't really do better than that. You just can't. All right. Well, now that that's out of the way, let's get on to the so-called main event and co-main event, the so-called title fights. I've totally flipped, by the way. The BMF belt is the only real title in the UFC. I no longer care about divisional championships. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill, Zhang Weili, Yan Xiaonan, and more? after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Okay, welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about the actual main event of UFC 300. Alex Pereira defended the light heavyweight title against Jamal Hill. We were heavily dismissive of Jamal Hill last week. Some people were upset about that. Apparently Jamal Hill has fans.
Yeah, that was odd, right?
Yeah.
I think the weird thing is that, like, if you're like Yuri Prochaska is a giant mess and he just gets by because he's athletic and aggressive and he hits really hard and so on,
which we did say.
Then but I feel like Yuri's fans are just like, yes, he is. His samurai spirit makes it work.
Right.
Glory to Yuri.
Yeah.
And then, like, if you say the same thing about Jamal Hill, his fans are just like, no, actually, he's really good. He's really good, and you guys are just haters.
Yep.
And the weird thing is that, like, both of these guys also, like, those responses from those fan bases also, like, seem to reflect the appropriate, like, what are they called? Wojaks that you would get from the response thing, you know, the manly guy with the top knot. And then the angry person being enraged about what is being said.
Uh-huh.
Like...
Oh, yeah, you're right.
But yeah, like, both... people seem to, like, really mad about the idea that, like, Jamal Hill is not...
A technician.
Like a technician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would get it if you just liked him and you knew he was a mess.
Yeah.
It's not like he's been in exciting fights. Like, sure, go for it.
I mean, like we said, there's two guys in the light heavyweight division who are like, I'm going to learn how to be good at stuff, and which were like Rakic and Ankalaev, and there's two guys that are just like, yeah, I'm just going to be an aggressive dude who hits things, and aggressive dudes who hit things have been champion, and the other two haven't.
Yep,
it's fine.
Yeah, it works,
but until it doesn't.
Yeah.
You have to fight
until either of them
9 foot tall man made out of stone who can actually strike.
Yeah, who ends his after murdering you, stands over your corpse doing what I can only gather from responses, some sort of Fortnite emoji or something.
Really?
Emote, some kind of emote is what people were saying, not emoji, an emote from a game, or it's like a TikTok meme. I don't fucking know. It saddens me to think that, although it is also very funny to think that Alex Pereira spends all of his time training, except when he's at home and he's falling asleep and he's looking at TikTok.
Yeah.
That's funny, right?
I mean, this is one of the things, is that if you are badass and intimidating enough, you can essentially do whatever you like.
Yeah. Just the idea of him just sitting there, he wakes up in the morning and stares at his phone for 2 hours looking at TikTok before he goes to training.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he can look at TikTok, he can play Fortnite. No one is going to judge him for it. He can have like a collection of those little Funko Pop dolls, anything like that.
Yep.
And people just be like, sure, Alex, you keep doing that.
Yeah, that's actually badass, Alex. I like that.
Yeah.
All of that having been said, and all of the shit we threw at Jamal Hill's technique last week, this was perhaps the best footwork I've ever seen from Jamal Hill.
Right?
Yeah. He wasn't stumbling around.
Yeah, it was okay.
He wasn't incredibly flat-footed. He was pivoting. He was staying over his feet. Like, he was pretty calm and collected. And,
you know who else stayed over Jamal Hill's feet, though?
Go on.
Alex Pereira. Yeah. And he got the coveted, I guess you would call it topside foot position.
Yeah.
And he just trod on his foot shortly before knocking him out.
Yep. Which, by the way, legal in MMA. It doesn't even stain a KO like it sometimes does in boxing.
No.
Perfectly legal.
Yep.
Yeah, he did step right on Jamal Hill's foot. This is also just a thing that happens. You get head clashes in southpaw orthodox fights, and you get foot stepping. Like,
Yep.
I don't even think it was deliberate. It just happens. You try to step.
Oh, no. Like, yeah, I cannot imagine, like, someone's deliberately going to be aiming to step on someone's foot.
Yeah.
Just...
There have been a couple boxing matches where it does seem like somebody has kind of decided to game that and do it on purpose. But I think the vast majority of the time, it's just a thing that happens when the foot you're trying to get into range first is directly opposed by the other guy's foot trying to do the same thing. His foot's in the way. That's why you end up stepping on each other's toes. But, yeah, pretty collected showing from Jamal Hill. And I like the fact that while this was a collected showing from Alex Pereira, it was still mostly a pressure performance. I wasn't sure how much more we were going to be seeing of that side of Pereira as he's trended more and more into being a outside fighter and a counterpuncher. But, yeah, he, despite not like, he didn't swarm Jamal Hill by any means, but just positionally, he put a lot of pressure on him. He just stood his ground, moved forward, ate up the space every time Jamal Hill gave it, and continued just like chipping away with his kicks and trying to draw looks out of Jamal Hill with footwork and imposing posture. And
yeah,
and then he slept him with the first left hook he threw.
Yep. Yeah, did a good job of sort of incentivizing, as he sort of did to Strickland, is that he got Hill pulling up punches. A lot of like jabs to the body. He kept like pulling his elbows down, and then went for that little sort of shovel hook, I guess. Make it look like he was going downstairs. What's that?
Yeah, I just call that a left hook. That's how Pereira throws all of his hooks. He doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think this.
Yeah,
yeah.
He throws what I've sometimes called a rising hook, but which really I think of as the classic hook. Like that's the way Joe Louis threw his hooks. It's the way Ray Robinson threw his hooks. Like old school boxers, you keep the elbow down. You sort of shoot the elbow off of the ribs, like with your hip rotation. And it's slightly more like an uppercut, but it still comes around the side. Just a classic hook. But yeah.
Yeah, this one was one. I mean, as I said, it was like the Yuri fight, but Yuri had the potential to create chaos that I didn't really think Hill did.
Yeah.
Because he's just more flat-footed. He was going to be, he wasn't going to be able to hurt Pereira before Pereira got into the range where he's just much better than him.
Yep.
But yeah, as you said, I thought it was still like, most of his ideas were good. He didn't like concede the low kicking game to Pereira too much. He landed, open side body kicks a whole bunch. Yeah, his footwork looked okay. But yeah, it's just a poisonous style matchup for him.
Yeah, I mean, Pereira he definitely went to the body, but he didn't even use that as like a setup for the left hook. He would have if he'd gotten the reactions, and probably also if he'd gotten Jamal Hill to like press into him, he would have probably used it to set it up like he did against Strickland. But really, he just kind of stepped in and loaded up and threw. He just kind of he basically, I think it was all positional. He just wanted to get Jamal Hill's back to the fence and try one.
Yep.
Just stepped in, chambered the shot. Jamal Hill threw, picked the wrong time to throw, and didn't see the shot that was coming. He probably thought it was a right hand coming at him as he saw Pereira stepping across and loading up the left. He probably thought he was countering a right hand with his own left, and instead he was just throwing his chin into a left hook. We should mention since this would have been the badass moment of the card if Max Holloway hadn't destroyed all other badass moments for all time forever, that this happened immediately after Pereira got kicked in the dick.
Yep.
Audible kick to the cup. Herb Dean steps in, and without even looking away from Jamal Hill, Pereira he literally just about physically stopped Herb Dean from interceding.
Yes.
It is truly
a single restraining hand. No.
Yeah. If Herb Dean had taken one more step forward, yeah, Pereira would have just, still without looking and still using just one hand, he would have flung him out of the octagon. Just shoved him straight through the cage door.
I think that if Herb had stepped forward, he just simply wouldn't have been able to move forward. Yes, but
he just starts moonwalking.
Yep.
Yeah, but a very cool moment. I mean, the man gets kicked low, but he's like, hold on, he's almost at the fence. Let me do something real quick. And then literally seconds later, landed the fight-ending shot. I mean, it's pretty badass.
Yep. It was reminiscent of, was it DJ against John Dodson? Where he's just like, no, get out of the way.
Yes. Yeah, but DJ did it.
Yeah, this one.
He did it in DJ style with several very rapidly spoken words.
Yes, exactly. It's how much it's the personality of the fighter in question. Like Pereira's just like, no, he is about to die.
Yeah. Yeah, Demetrius Johnson does that in like a Ben Shapiro style. Then I got out of the way. I don't actually need to step in.
I don't know.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. And that's all there is to say. The fight was 3 minutes. Yeah, go on. You got something?
They've said that Pereira's gonna, he might go up to heavyweight, sure, but ever fight Tom Aspinall. I don't know where John Jones is. He'll only be he'll only have 30 pounds and 6 inches on Tom Aspinall, so
yeah,
should
tough
be
one.
Interesting. And Tom Aspinall can grapple. Also, the takes about him being one of the, is he one of the greatest combat sports fighters of all time, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know. Again, like the Max thing, I think it starts to get cloudy and annoying when you talk about stuff like this, because he's beaten everyone that he could. Mm-hmm. He's beaten every opportunity that he's had. If he hasn't been given, really good grapplers, then that's not Alex Pereira's fault. But what you can say is that he has been amazingly impressive. He has improved throughout his career, including, becoming a better striker whilst he is an MMA fighter, which isn't always the case for a lot of people who have transitioned over from being kickboxers into MMA.
Yep.
It's that they have almost invariably gotten worse.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he's given us some incredible moments. And so yeah, I think, more than being is he one of the best ever, or is he simply just someone who's benefited from terrible matchmaking? I mean, you can just look at him as a tremendous fighter who has improved leaps and bounds over the course of his career, and kind of continues to do so. Yeah. And that's sort of all I really want from fighters.
Yeah. That is the magic of those two words, though. This is a little writer's trick for the listeners out there. If you want to get ahead of an annoying person arguing with you, making an exaggerated declarative statement, you just say one of before it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, in a certain sense, sure, Alex Pereira is one of the greatest combat sports athletes ever. He's been incredibly successful and won 2 titles each in 2 different combat sports.
Yep.
That is impressive. He's right up there with Alistair Overeem in that.
Yep.
In that. Is Alistair Overeem a greater combat sports athlete than Max Holloway? He did a thing Max Holloway hasn't done. He was never, ever quite as great in either of them as Max Holloway in his one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you're talking about combat sports, because that's how you have to justify Alex Pereira's all-time greatness, is by connecting it to the fact that he's been great in 2 sports, but then you also open the door to, 200 years of boxers and things like that, in which there are some pretty legendary figures. It's got to be said.
Yep.
Is he a better combat sports athlete than Roberto Duran or Ray Robinson or Muhammad Ali? Or, I don't know. But one of?
Yeah.
Sure, he's one of. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just, he's done some cool and unique stuff.
Yeah. He's done some really...
That's basically it.
That's, Like you said, I think before we started recording, he's the greatest because I like him better than the other ones.
Yeah, you can just say that. If people want to say that, feel free.
Just, we know that's what you mean. Just say that.
Mm-hmm.
Just say you like him. I like him too. We agree.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's take another break. Short one there. After this, let's come back and talk about Zhang Weili. We're certainly going to hit more of this card. It does seem like, as was the case last week, it would probably be wise to turn that into a bonus episode on Heavy Hands, on patreon.com/Heavy Hands. So make sure you check that out if you want to hear more from UFC 300 after you listen to this episode. But after this, Zhang Weili, Yan Xiaonan. Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are 1 or 2 of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Heavy Hands, talking about the other title fight of UFC 300 now, Zhang Weili defending against Yan Xiaonan. Another one, I think we kind of nailed it, to be honest.
Yep.
This is probably more than any of the others. Which is not a great brag because the dynamic was quite simple. Zhang Weili is going to do wrestling. Yan Xiaonan is going to do striking. And when either of these things is allowed to happen uncontested, that person will do well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there might have been some people out there, I don't know, who might have been just like, no, Zhang is simply at another level. She's going to crush her. Because I'm sure the odds were probably fairly stacked here for the champ, right?
They must have been, as they should have been. I mean, the fact that she has such a huge advantage in one phase that she has fallen in love with, it did in fact lead to an incredibly lopsided decision.
Mm-hmm.
A fight in which Zhang Weili essentially won by submission, TKO, and decision.
Yeah.
Honestly, because she choked Yan Xiaonan out at the end of round 1. I don't think Yan really started to go out until the very final seconds of the round, which is why she was able to stay mostly conscious and recover right away. I would not have been shocked if the referee had given Zhang Weili a TKO win in round 2 when she was just flattening Yan out, mounting her from behind and blasting her on both sides of the head with her fists. A lot of unanswered punches, particularly for a women's fight, as referees tend to step in a little quicker, unfairly with the women. I wouldn't have been surprised if it had been stopped there. And then, of course, ultimately, Zhang Weili won a decision by banking 4 of the rounds. But, hey, in that one round, where I think Zhang Weili was just actually extremely tired and had to recover from trying to finish Yan Xiaonan twice, and was therefore forced into more of a ranged striking match, Yan Xiaonan was simply beating her with the boxing.
Yeah, she's a genuinely like quite potent fighter there now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she couldn't press her advantage as much as perhaps she needed to.
Yeah.
But again, this was simply due to the fact that it would have been as much as you can sort of armchair quarterback it and be like, oh yeah, she should have just gone for broke once Zhang was gassed. I think, there's many there's some alternative realities where she tried that, and then Yan simply hit a single very gassed takedown on her, and she didn't even win that round.
Yeah, pretty much. Because as expected, Zhang showed an ability to hit basically any kind of takedown she felt like.
Yep.
There were several just double legs. There were several rear waist cinches after ducking under a punch and sort of allowing Yan to throw herself by and then getting her back and just running her off her feet. Any time that they were in close proximity, Zhang was able to take her down with relative ease. So yeah, if Yan Xiaonan had gone for it, had tried to put on she was winning because of the thing we talked about, that Zhang is still not comfortable leading. And Yan was being very patient. And with the additional benefit of Zhang being tired, that was really what allowed her to... All the shots she landed were nice little counters.
Mm-hmm.
Counter right hands, which we know she's got a good one. So yeah, I don't think her going after Zhang would have allowed her to do any better than she was by hanging back and letting Zhang move into her range and then cracking her.
Yep, it was her only real chance.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a particularly big one. Is the unfortunate one thing for her.
Yeah. So, what do you make of Zhang Weili as champion? Obviously, the wrestling and the grappling, as Miguel posited last week, when I think I was talking about how I was impressed with Jan's ability to sort of stay patient and stay safe on the ground with Mackenzie Dern. And Miguel very correctly pointed out that this would not be as feasible against Zhang Weili, who will actually, first of all, is less willing to give up position, going for a submission attack. And secondly, is much more dangerous in top position, much more striking oriented. I think that was very much the case. Because every time Yan got in trouble, it was because she made some massive positional concession, and she was basically compelled to do that because Zhang was hurting her and threatening her and making her very, very uncomfortable when she was on top. She was not able to do the sort of Alex Pereira, Anderson Silva, chill out and control posture thing.
Yeah, this is the difference between, as we will probably talk about on a bonus episode, but maybe, later in the show, but the difference between an MMA guard and a BJJ guard.
Yeah.
And the threats that are present there, and how that informed Oliveira Tsaroukian.
Mm-hmm.
As much as it did, the comparison between these two fights.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do I feel about Zhang as a champion now?
Yeah.
I don't know. Broadly, this is just a really dominant win.
Mm-hmm.
Is that she got super gassed at one point for genuinely actually fairly understandable reasons, because as you said, she was utterly thrashing Yan, and I think a lot of cardio is not just as we've talked about how mental it is, and it's also, I think it's just expectations.
Sure.
I think Yan probably was training this entire fight camp just under the understanding that she was going to be getting thrashed from top position.
Yep.
Which sort of informed how which kind of informed how well she was able to keep it together after she was destroyed in those first 2 rounds, and why she had such why she's had such a strong comeback.
That was a bigger surprise by far than how gassed Zhang got from going for the finish super hard twice, is the fact that Yan looked really very fresh in round 3.
Mm-hmm. And I think Yan, however much you might be like, oh yeah, everyone is the biggest test of my career kind of thing, she probably just wasn't expecting to be in that kind of trouble at that point with someone like Yan.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I still think like Zhang simply has. I mean, we have validation really. I think about the limits of her skill set.
Yeah.
But she's still, you just got to be honest. There aren't that many women in this division who are going to be able to test her on it.
Yep. Most of the ones who could test her wrestling and grappling don't seem like they'd be capable of giving her any trouble on the feet. So, Zhang is really a win for well-roundedness.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that shows.
I mean, with the obvious exception of the fact that if Tatiana Suarez manages to,
except Tatiana Suarez is a terrible striker.
Yeah, but if she manages to stay healthy enough, and she's also just huge.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, though.
That was the other. Yeah,
obviously she'd be a threat in the wrestling and grappling, but provided Zhang could use her footwork and stay at bay, she could just do nothing but counterpunch Tatiana all day and land big shots. That's what I mean. That's the wonderful benefit of being just comfortable enough and just dangerous enough in the striking that Yan Xiaonan can outslick you and find counters, but all you got to do against somebody like Suarez is just focus on defending the wrestling. And if you can do that, then you can win elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, that does pretty much seem like it. That's the last feasible test for her I can see in this division. I mean, after that, we're getting to, in terms of the rankings, we're getting to Amanda Lemos again, Jessica Andrade again, Anna Jandiroba, Marina Rodriguez, Mackenzie Dern, Amanda Hebish. No, none of them.
Yeah, I mean, 3 of those women just lost, too. I mean, they're not even right there on the cusp at the moment. So, yeah, I mean, I think Zhang Weili is very clearly the best in the division. But as you said, some validation of our concerns about her limitations. That this, perhaps more than any other, in fact, looked like a fight where she was really, really hesitant to engage on her own terms in the striking.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I think her team is aware of that and will try to address it. I think probably another thing that either you or Miguel said is almost certainly true is that so much of Zhang's preparation for fights is focused on beating the opponent.
Yeah,
that she has probably just not really had a lot of time to get better as a champion.
It's clearly very tactical preparation, which is how do we make this fighter in front of us beat the fighter in front of...
Yeah.
How do we make our fighter beat the fighter that's in front of them, rather than how do we make this fighter into someone who can beat everyone?
But now seems like a perfect time to start focusing on Zhang in her camp. Yep. She has basically thwarted except for Suarez, and that would be a great time to work on her striking fundamentals, which seem like the only really glaring weakness. And not just, again, it's not just technical. I think it's psychological. I just think she's never liked to lead, and I think however many techniques her camp tries to prepare her with for how to strike against this particular opponent, they have as yet been unable, and this is not a slight on them. Fighters have limitations. There's just certain things fighters are innately not good at. But they have not been able to get her comfortable, controlling a fight with her striking. They've not been able to get her so comfortable with like the positions that she needs to get to where she can say like feint her way into range and use that feint to like take an angle and then let go a nice relaxed strike that isn't thrown with full power and full speed. She just has very much the feeling of a rote striker. Like you will see sequences where she will throw a punch, hit a feint, and then change levels, or throw a punch, change levels, come back up with another strike. Like it's not like she doesn't have any of those sort of layered, shall we say, Holloway-esque ideas, but she clearly does not feel them the way Holloway does. She does not concoct them on the fly. She does not mix up these entries like intuitively based on what she is getting from her opponent. They all have the feeling of something that she has drilled on pads and is therefore just trying to sort of blindly do in the fight. There's no flow. There's no flow to her striking. But
yeah, as said, for the foreseeable future, it seems like that will just be enough.
Yeah, I think it will. But that's why I say I think this is the perfect time to start trying to develop some of that comfort and relaxation and flow in Zhang's striking. I think you can be a champion who does an excellent job preparing for everybody and is a great game planner and still improve those things. Like Alexander Volkanovski did not have the boxing game he currently has. Like, do you remember like his fight with Korean Zombie? That was like another level of Volkanovski's boxing. That was not, did not have the feeling of, oh, I've prepared these things because I know these moves. I know Korean Zombie's susceptible to these moves. It had the feeling of, I've been doing a lot of boxing and I kind of love it, and let me show off what I know how to do. That was a Volkanovski who had been focusing on his own improvement more than on what's the safest route to beat the fighter in front of him.
Yep.
And this has happened a lot. Ilya Tupuria, before he was a champion, but even through his title winning effort against Volk, was getting dramatically better and more comfortable and more sophisticated as a technician. And more comfortable. And that's like the only thing there is left to see from Zhang Weili. And as you said very correctly, it won't be necessary. She's still going to beat everybody, as she has been. But that's the only thing I think that she could upgrade to actually take herself to the next level and to start basically winning fights however the hell she feels like it.
Yeah. And yeah, she's got, I think, as you mentioned, I think the Suarez fight is one of those where perhaps there's some synthesis between those two approaches.
Yeah.
She just needs to build up work on her striking, but who knows? I think, because I get the impression from her is that she loves wrestling just more than she loves striking. She might have started as a striker, but it's the development that we've seen from her.
Yep.
Since that. It's just the difference between the two Jędrzejczyk fights.
Yep.
The first one, just a big striking war, and the second one was her, at least a big part of it was just her throwing Joanna on her head.
Yep.
I think it's partly what she does, it's partly what she likes to do, and because of that, that's informing the sort of tactical direction of her camps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would be nice to see her have a really crisp striking performance.
Yeah. Yeah. Tracy Cortez, another fighter who recently had a massive improvement in comfort and flow in her boxing game. Although I forgot she's no longer at strawweight. So that's nothing for Zhang to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I mean, that's really all I have to say. It was an entirely one-sided fight. Great positional grappling from Zhang Weili. Tons of really smart positional threats, which were, even when they weren't just about finishing the fight, were being used to advance her position on the ground. The arm triangle, I think, in round 4 was another nice one. That was a pretty close call. I mean, credit to Yan Xiaonan for being so insanely willing to die that she continued to build herself up and try to force scrambles when she was getting pounded in round 2, continued to hang tough in a completely locked-in rear naked choke in round 1, which very nearly saw her go fully unconscious. She showed incredible heart and determination, and probably preparedness too, but so much of that was basically in defending or not quite losing, and not so much in her ability to actually gain control of the fight. So, otherwise, I think that's pretty much it for Zhang versus Yan. All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. I will admonish you once more to check out the Heavy Hands Patreon. If you're still the type of person who types in URLs, that is patreon.com/heavyhands. But also you can sort of smash on the keyboard with your fists or face. And as long as you produce something like Heavy Hands and Patreon, you can just find it with the search engine. Also, check out, we talked about all the rest of UFC 300 there, so make sure you don't miss that. If you want some analysis of this event, I will have some pieces forthcoming shortly. Certainly, I'm writing about Holloway Gaethje first, but there's some other stuff from this card that I'd like to hit, especially because we have a UFC-less weekend coming up. And if you didn't catch them already, I already wrote about separately Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway on my Substack, so that's facepunching.substack.com. I appreciate you, and I've had a great time breaking down fights and producing a lot more articles than I have for the last few years. It's been a blast, and I appreciate very much all your support over there. Find us on Twitter at EvilGregJackson. That's Phil. At BoxingBush. That's me. I mean, who knows? Next time, you could know the tweet we're talking about before we even read it to you on the podcast. Wouldn't that be great? Anyway, we'll be back next week to preview Matthews Nicolau versus Alex Perez.
Or whoever happens to be replacing Alex Perez.
Yeah, Matthews Nicolau versus
TBD.
Yeah, TBD. My favorite flyweight. So come join us again for that. We look forward to it, sort of. We hope you are also sort of looking forward to it. And until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands. I have to start saying, if you came here for the finer points of face punching, you came to one of the right places.
Gotta hedge those bets.
Since I named my Substack.
Yeah.
No one can tell me I'm wrong if I say one of.
You came here for the finer points of face punching delivered in an audio-only format.
That's right. More qualifiers. That's good writing.
Yeah. Yep.
I do actually...
Precision, that's what we want.